Oh, hello, and welcome to Aldente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. D stands for evil.
I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have the second part of The Eighth Orphan, which is part of the WontThinkStraight saga of stories on Reddit. The Eighth Orphan, Part 2.
Which is the 11th, which is also the 11th WontThinkStraight story.
Yes.
If we want to add more numbers again.
Yeah. You can check these out. You can check out The Eighth Orphan, both part 1 and 2 on Reddit NoSleep, along with all the other WontThinkStraight stories. Before we get too far ahead, I guess we should give our initial recommendations. I'm going to recommend this one, including as part of the first one as well.
I am not going to recommend this one.
I am also not going to recommend this one, but I'm hopeful that you can change my mind on it.
I highly doubt it. I've given up.
It's happened.
No, I refuse to believe. Honestly, I think I know why you guys don't recommend it. It's like the same reason why I probably would why I recommend it is because, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
So let's find out why we gave such contrasting recommendations. Starting with the rundown. So we start the story following some waxing philosophical about the complexity of the human mind and the power of suggestion. We then dive back into the events of Steve and WTS's interviews and work with Satya, seemingly haunted now by the spirit of an eyeless, tongueless, and bloodily stumpy boy from her orphanage days. They quickly come to realize that there's a connection here between the ghost boy, the father, and Jockham's death. Vinhadalhos' people! A la the iconic line in Revelation from the 1973 film Soylent Green. You heard that right. The children of the orphanage were being fed a dish with human meat carved off of this boy. And he was being kept alive and quiet in his own off-limits quarters in the orphanage by Father Abraham. And it seems Joachim remembered or realized this earlier than anyone else, and that's why he committed suicide. He wasn't saying they had 8 orphans. He was saying with his last breath that they had 8 orphans. Not the number, kids. The action of consuming food. Steve decides to use hypnosis on Satya to better acquire details about Satya's childhood, and she agrees, hoping they might find something useful and stop these nightly encounters she's having with the ghost boy. It's here we get some more details regarding the father's proclivities with using hypnosis himself on the children, and that fateful night, Satya woke up screaming. Father took Satya to his quarters and manipulated her into falling asleep and forgetting what happened. However, this appeared to only partially work, as she did seem to hear an argument Father had with someone or something about a bargain and how it wanted him to sacrifice the girl. Satya or someone else or else?
I'm going to stop you there.
Hmm?
Did she overhear that, or was that just a dream? Because I read that as she just had a spooky dream.
I kind of interpret it as it could go either way. Like either she had the dream, or like while she was like dozing off or going to sleep, she like in her mind, like while she was dreaming, she also overheard like the father like arguing loudly with somebody in the same room. Because that sometimes happens, like when like something like an external thing happens in the same room as you while you're sleeping, like it will affect you in real life. I've been having that constantly, like the last couple of weeks, because I leave the TV going, watching like something on YouTube, and I'll start like dozing off, and that'll like start interacting with my own dreams. until I wake up and see that until I wake up and realize, oh shit, it's like 4:00 and the TV's been on, and that's why Game Grumps has been in my dreams, like talking. Yeah, like that's kind of like how I interpreted it. It was that like it was sort of she was dreaming, but like she was also overhearing an argument that was happening in the same room.
Yeah.
I mean that's just up for my observation of it, but
I just didn't view it that way, so
fair enough.
Rather, I didn't even think of that as an option, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
But the nightmares and all that stuff seem to stop since the next morning and onward, Satya has a pretty good and happy life. And Father never seemed to have sacrificed her or any of the other 6 other orphans, though he seems to have been suffering himself nightly, occasionally screaming in pain from something, but just kind of like shrugging it off as like having bad dreams himself. Eventually, the father does find foster families for the children, and after they leave, he closes down the orphanage to go isolate himself in prayer till his eventual death. It seems that since the funeral, Satya has caught the tag-along spirit who nightly whispers the same vile bargain to her, threatening that it was cheated by Abraham, and if she does not force child cannibalism on another, then it will choose one for her, one of her own children. She has tried many avenues to stop this thing, but to no avail thus far. Steve and WTS were the latest attempt, and it seems, at least for now, the struggle continues. Finn. So yeah, that was The Eighth Orphan Part 2. And I suppose we should move on to Everyone Tolerates the Grammar Inquisitions. At this point, I've got one that I really just cared to put in here. One that I like, the one that like stood out the most. So, so heavy that she was too tired able to open them until morning. So this is when like she's getting hypnotized to go back to sleep and stuff by Father Abraham, and I think it should be so heavy that she was too tired, unable to open them until morning.
Yeah, or unable, or unable, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and unable. And if you want extra clarity, like and unable to open her eyes till morning, if you want to go that far. But that is it for my grammar inquisition. So, Mikey, these stands for evil.
I have a conjunction junction.
All right. And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
It's why every culture in history has shared stories by the campfire, in the hope that with each telling, our dark ignorance recedes just a bit further through enlightenment. It's as if we were meant for greater things. It's for this noble purpose that Steve pursued psychology, and I was eager to follow. So the right combination of words could reprogram our minds and unlock our tremendous human potential. But you would have no reason to want to. But as you sit there, comprehending these words in your head, you start to notice how your skin feels. And Satya was a good subject to test this on. It didn't need Sherlock for the orphans to eventually put 2 and 2 together that night of their reunion. It seemed this wasn't the first time she had undergone this process. It was such a common occurrence that Father didn't even stop classes when interrupted by a blackout. It allowed Abraham to get away with murder, leaving no evidence of his crime. But when they asked him about it the next morning, he would just smile and tell them not to worry. It was a few weeks after the funeral that Satya started noticing the boy again. It wouldn't let her forget, and that he will claim what was owed, and she will give it to him, so that his essence can be passed on as it now does in her. And if she doesn't choose, he will choose for her, and she is too afraid to open her eyes. Finn.
Wow. So one thing that I noticed while I was listening to that was since you did away with like you didn't do away completely with like the blackouts, but like it did away with like the electrical problem. Like you didn't mention any of that. So it just mentioned like how like she'd had a hypnosis process done to her before, and then like talking about the father, and so it's like the hypnosis angle with the father really like came out early on, and like apparently the kids were just blacked out during classes, and it would allow the father to get away with murder because like no like all the subjects were all the witnesses would be asleep. It was just like really kind of interesting, like again like added this extra level of like sinisterness to like the father.
It's funny how we can get those weird angles when Mikey lists a bunch of sentences throughout the story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ands, or buts, because there's always better words to use.
Indeed. And then I suppose we have the gamer in yellow. Or
Yes.
So I meant to say the grammar in yellow with the gamer in yellow. Sorry. Now we have the grammar in yellow, I suppose.
Yes, with the gamer in yellow. That's me. I got one. Our reality is shaped by our thoughts, and our thoughts are shaped by words. So the right combination of words could reprogram our minds and unlock our tremendous human potential. Our words have much more than people realize. So when I read that, I'm like, much more what? Shouldn't it say like much more power than people realize? Because it just have much more.
Yeah. That I actually remember fumbling over that, and I thought I don't know why I didn't put that into my notes.
Okay, I got you.
Excellent. Yeah, because that's
all I got.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, yeah, words have much more power than people realize. I think that's legit. What it should be.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess on to actual thoughts next.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with this one here. Actually, this is not in my notes, but Mikey brought it up earlier, so I'm going to actually reread it and mention something about it.
Okay.
Where the hell was it? Shit, it was the very beginning. Something about here we go. Yeah, it's why
an orphan.
No. It's why every culture in history has shared stories by the campfire, in the hopes that with each telling, our dark ignorance recedes just a bit further through enlightenment. I thought campfire stories were to scare people. Like I thought,
yeah,
I thought we just did that to have fun and scare people. I didn't realize we were also doing it to drown out the dark and ignorance and in the favor of the enlightenment.
Maybe originally that was the purpose, but
yeah,
when nowadays it's just to spook people.
Yeah, and I mean also like there is like kind of there is a sort of an aspect of like having fun by a campfire story, or like having fun telling creepy campfire stories and stuff like that around a campfire. But it's also there's also that angle of like you also do it for like the camaraderie and stuff like that. So like to like sort of like you're among friends and like you sort of like fight back the fear that you might have of being in like the dark woods and stuff by telling a story to your friends. So I kind of get it, but like at the same time, it's like just for that joke of just like I thought we told creepypastas, or I thought we told scary campfire stories to get scared. But I digress. I'll move on to my actual thought, my first actual thought. From rubbing sticks for fire to launching spacecraft in less than 1,000 generations, our capacity for intelligence is overwhelmingly greater than what's needed for mere survival. It's as if we were meant for greater things. We are the very essence of the universe itself, given sentience to understand itself and its mysteries better. It's for this noble purpose that Steve pursued psychology, and I was eager to follow. Man, this opening like section here really feels more like the start of a sci-fi story than the second part of our previous creepypasta that we read.
Because it is like very like fantasy kind of vibes to it almost, and like how outrageous it is.
Well, no, like it's not so much fantasy as like this is very much like it's waxing like philosophical, but it feels.
But it's doing it to the extent of it sounding mystical.
I don't think it's okay. I mean, I guess it could be mystical. To me, it reads more like something you'd see in like at the like on the start, like at the start of a story about like space exploration, or like you know what this reminded me of. Actually, this kind of reminded me of something out of like something that would be said in like Mass Effect Andromeda, where like they're space explorers and like we were made for better things or like for greater things, like to go out into the stars and reach to other planets and stuff. That's what it started like feeling like to me.
Fantastical might have been the word I was trying to find.
Okay, yeah, that perhaps, yeah.
It's like Mass Effect is a good example, but Mass Effect is also not realistic.
yeah, it's soft science fiction over.
Yes.
It kind of mixes a little bit, but yeah, it's mostly soft science fiction. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. One hypothesis Steve was researching was that the mind was software. Our reality is shaped by our thoughts, and our thoughts are shaped by words. So the right combination of words could reprogram our minds and unlock our tremendous human potential. And now this is starting to feel a lot like something out of Eclipse Phase or even Unknown Armies. The first thing, Eclipse Phase, being a transhuman sci-fi horror RPG system. So like your mind is software, rewrite it. Your body is hardware, replace it. Like that kind of thing.
One. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then like the latter, Unknown Armies is very much like a postmodern urban fantasy RPG where like magic is just kind of like how if the wizards and the magic users of that system and that setting are just are crazy obsessive human beings who are just exerting their will upon reality to change reality itself, just with how like crazy obsessive they are with something. So like that's kind of like it was kind of bringing that to mind, that as well, like the whole like our reality is shaped by our thoughts and like our thoughts are shaped by the words. So yeah, it's very postmodern magic or transhuman future sci-fi is what I was kind of getting the vibe from for this. And then the next thing we have here, this was a shocker for me. Like I'll go into it. So this is the quote here in this part. It didn't need Sherlock for the orphans to eventually put two and two together that night on their reunion. A missing orphan, a ghostly apparition with missing limbs, and mysterious meat. They had been consuming human flesh. And to this, I was like, wait, what? Like, where's this connection coming from? And then I was like, wait. So I went back to the previous part of the story. So this is from the 8th Orphan Part 1. She still remembered the day she got that fateful call. She was preparing dinner. As fate would have it, vinha dalhos, a traditional Portuguese dish of marinated pork, the way Abraham had first taught her. It was something she cooked once a month, not just because of the happy memories it brought her, but also because she was still experimenting with the recipe. After all these years, she still couldn't quite seem to get the taste and texture exactly as she remembered it the first time it was cooked for her. Oh my God. They were eating long pig this whole time. Long pig, for anybody who doesn't know, is a term for human flesh because of its similarities to pork.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
to add some critically silliness that I have in my notes here, the quote is, "At this point, she had a sudden realization of why her recipe was never quite the same.
Yeah.
It lacked the faint taste of disinfectant.
That's literally like
Which-
farther down my notes, and my reaction is just, yeah.
But that doesn't say it lacked long pig. So she's been eating long pig this entire time, just couldn't get the recipe quite right.
Yeah.
That is critically silly.
I saw it two different ways. When that first dropped, it's like, okay, it's not the disinfectant you're missing, it's the fact that you're not adding human meat to your recipes. That's what it is. But then I got thinking, it's like, oh, okay, no, she's actually just been actually doing this and has been still consuming human flesh this whole time. Okay.
I don't think it was that. I think it was like also like I was like, oh well, like that's why it's missing is like that she's eating she's eating human flesh back in the day versus now she's using pork for the dish. But then I realized like when it adds the disinfectant, I was like, what? Oh, she had like faint taste of disinfectant. Is like right because human flesh and pork, as far as like I've heard. Does have a similar texture and taste to pork. So like she may not notice the difference if she's having pork over if she's having human flesh. So the distinction is that there was disinfectant on the meat to keep it from like going bad because because father was carving it off of a live boy that had been like slowly was being kept and slowly carved away over the course of like a month. So like he needed to use disinfectant to like make sure like the meat didn't spoil. But yeah, the premise is still all the same. Like she was eating people when she was a kid, and like that's why her recipe never tasted exactly the same, was because she wasn't using the right ingredients when she was an adult. So it's like yeah. And then my favorite, I think probably quite possibly my favorite line in this entire story is my next one. His last words were not just that they had 8 orphans, 8 being a number, but they had 8 orphans, 8 as in the action of consuming. And to this, I was like, oh, that's so fucking good. I love that. I honestly like legit love that twist, that twisted wordplay, because the way the character heard it, like initially, it wouldn't necessarily be perceived to them, and as a result to us, the reader, that it was 8 ATE. He would have thought that that Joachim had said they had 8 orphans, EIGHT, the number 8. So it was such a good play on words. I fucking like absolutely love it. I'm here for it.
It was good, but like for me, I honestly face palmed a bit when I read that because like I'll get to it in my notes, but like I was kind of like confused at most of the reads.
What? Okay.
I'll get there.
Yeah, I'll stop. I won't judge you. I'll try to contain myself from judging you on this.
That's for later. You judge me later.
Yeah, I'll judge you after recording. So the next thing here, Satya agreed to being hypnotized. Oh, you know, we kind of touched on this like in actually Mikey's. I'll do it. Satya agreed to being hypnotized, which in brackets with the appropriate safeguards in place to dig up more about her past. She went under a lot quicker and easier than Steve had expected. It seemed this wasn't the first time she had undergone this process. So at this point, I was like, again, this was like, as I'm reading the story, I was writing my notes down. I was like, Father Abraham, what have you done? What did you do, Abraham? Just because like that was my first instance, like, oh shit, this is what Abraham hypnotized the children to forget things. And that's why like she was so susceptible to it. This also this part here also kind of gave me the vibes from a movie we've watched, or like I've watched and I've shared with I think Gamer in Yellow. I don't know if Mikey's seen it. Communion, which is a movie about a guy who seems to have an alien abduction event happen to him, and like when they're looking into it like deeper, because he's like having like horrible nightmares and like night terrors and stuff. So he goes into hypnosis, has some hypnosis sessions to try and like uncover what happened that night. And it stars Christopher Walken. So and like one of my favorite lines in the movie is just like he's under hypnosis and he's describing what's happening like in the event, and he's like so he's like in his bedroom with his wife and stuff like that, and it's at nighttime and so Christopher Walken in his voice is just like, there's something in my room. I don't think I want it in my room. This like little gray alien like pokes its head out the door, like from through the door. And now Satya is forever going to look like Christopher Walken to me.
Wow.
Satya is now played by Christopher Walken.
Just in a wig or something.
Yeah, just in drag.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had like that. That's my critical silliness for this. Is like it brought forward like, oh yeah, this is like that hypnosis session from the movie Communion, and now I can't stop thinking about Christopher Walken.
I mean, that's just normal though.
I mean, yeah.
Look at any of your D&D sessions.
How dare you, sir?
Always around.
It's not my fault. I like the impression.
Hey, we all like it. We love it.
Anyway, moving on. Satya spoke fondly of how Abraham. Oh no, we covered this one with Mikey's bringing it up. So yeah, my next thing here, he would have kept the orphan in his own quarters. It was the only place in the entire orphanage that was off limits. The children had never heard so much as a sound coming from his room. So the tongue would have been one of the first things to be removed. I mean, yes, but also perhaps maybe there should be a mention like the quarters were like maybe when Satya is brought into the room, she notices that the walls are thicker in this room or something. I don't know.
How would you know that?
I just feel like, yes, like he's tongueless, so he's like he can't speak, but he can still yell. Like he didn't get his like tonsils removed, or like he didn't get like his vocal cords removed. Like he can still.
You don't
talk.
know that.
I mean, I don't know that. I don't know. It just like just being tongueless doesn't initially mean that you're completely mute. Like you can still like scream and like make noises for that other people might be able to hear. But again, we also don't know, like maybe he's being sedated as well to be placated and such.
Like for what the damage done to him, we only know what's visually there. It's not like Satya like inspected the dude's tonsils when he was sitting there, you know.
Let me just like in my psychic hypnosis or in my hypnosis session, let me just quickly like dissect this like do a quick autopsy on this ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like a quiet thing. It's like I mean, yeah, he doesn't have a tongue, but like he could still probably make some noise, but I'll let it go. And the next thing I have here. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure what I got here. Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is when he's like arguing with the entity. So only he was shouting at her, or only he wasn't shouting at her, but someone else. Something about a deal of how the others would be spared if he sacrificed the girl as agreed. Father pleading to have the chance to find another. When Satya woke, it was back in her own bed, the last of the children to wake. She felt like it was a good day. The memories of the night before had dissipated like so many dreams had before it. Nothing eventful happened from that night onward. For the next couple of years, life continued as normal, though Abraham grew noticeably more sickly during that time. So this is kind of interesting to me because like about like the deal and like how like what had been happening before as to like what happened after this event and stuff like that. So it seems like Abraham made a deal with something supernatural, presumably, involving cannibalism. And while he did feed the children meat from another child and hypnotize them to make them forget certain things and such, he also seems to have taken a hit to spare to spare Satya's life, maybe, or somebody else's life. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure on like on the her that was mentioned, because like there's a bit later on in the story where like there's a locket and it like belonged to a Vanna, and like who the heck is that? But I've got some notes on that, or some questions more about that later on. So it's like, yeah, it seemed like he took a hit for the orphans and started like getting sickly, and started also like getting like being tormented at night by the creature and stuff like that, or by the ghosts and stuff. So like that definitely doesn't forgive what he did, like feeding them human meat and like hypnotizing them against their will and such. But it adds a slight, and I emphasize slight shade of gray to the matter, but only slightly. like how redeemable he might be, and he's not redeemable. He's not very redeemable after what is exposed here in this part to me. But
100% like the true origin of how all this started with him, and like how this had to happen. We just have a glimpse into it.
Yeah. And I mean, this also points out like to why he went out and isolated himself and like took on a life of after the orphanage. He took on a recluse life of like deep prayer and solitude, was like probably trying to seek some means of redemption, or maybe trying to find a way to like exorcise the spirit that was like haunting him until his death. And then we, like you said, like we do get like a bit at the end, like, so this is the quote I kind of took for this. So whenever she lies in bed, she feels it breathing on her neck, whispering evils in her ear and tormenting her thoughts, telling her that Abraham did not keep his bargain to make another sacrifice, that Abraham had cheated him through death, and that he will claim what was owed, and she will give it to him. So the boy is the thing that Abraham made a deal with? For what reason? What did Abraham get out of this bargain? Was this Vanna from the locket like that they found on his body, like when he died? They found a girl's locket that said Vanna. Like, was that his daughter from like the past, like the past or something like that? Was she actually the user of the mattress in his quarters, or was that also the boy? Was that just the boy that he was slowly carving meat off of? Was she sacrificed instead of the six or the seven orphans, or was this all sort of like a cyclic situation where Abraham was stuck in this situation from when he was a child, unknowingly eating human flesh to transfer this evil to him? And it's just happening over. It's just been happening over and over and over again. And the original bargain has kind of just been lost to time. Like, I don't understand what, like, we don't get a lot of there's a lot of questions I had by the end of the story. That I was like, we don't really have a lot of context as to like what the bargain was, and like why this thing is tormenting them, and why, like, we know why it wants them to eat human flesh, because it's a transfer system. Like, it'll transfer to like the next vessel or something like that. But like, what is
is it a transfer spirit?
Honestly, yeah.
I like it, as in like a transfer student, transfer spirit.
Oh, okay. Okay, no. I thought it was like, yeah, like a transfer ritual, like where the spirit, well, like by consuming that flesh, the spirit can transfer into that body, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was left with a bunch of questions at the end of the story that I'm like, we never really get an answer to. And while I'd love to, but while I'd love to see a future story try to investigate further, like let's find out, let's get a little bit more about like Satya's journey, like trying to stop this thing, or trying to like look into this thing, or maybe like her, like maybe Steve and WTS like help her again to try and like figure out what's going on, like, because maybe things get worse. But I also understand and don't necessarily hate if we don't, because this is a horror story. We don't get all the answers. We just get we often get questions more so than answers. And it doesn't always have a happy ending, but that's good. That's fine. Like, that's a good thing. So like it's weird because like I had all these questions by the end of the story, and yeah, I wouldn't mind them getting like answered, but I wasn't left like some stories we have, for some reason in this story I wasn't left yeah, I wasn't left wanting, or like I wasn't left unsatisfied by the journey I'd gone through with like part 1 and part 2. I think it's mostly because like of just how like I got punched by the revelation that they were eating flesh, like human, like they had been eating human flesh, and I don't know how I missed that from part one. Like,
That's, okay, that's a big part of my problem with the story. It's not in part one.
it kind of is though. Like,
Yep.
It's
really,
a throwaway line
I
that gets
don't.
expanded
Sorry.
upon so much in the second one, but it's dropped in a manner that that the story is telling it as if you should have gotten it in the first one.
I don't know, man. I like rereading, or like I didn't reread all the part one, but like reading part two, and then like just from like a week ago when I read part one, I was able to like kind of like, oh, that's what like that dish that they were always making with pork. Fuck, and that's
Yes,
why he was
because you
stumped.
have the yes, because you have the context from the second one. When we just read through the first one and none of us caught it. We thought it was just a random throwaway backstory moment to flesh out the character more, because that's what it looked like, and it's just left unassuming like that. Meanwhile, it's the main focus of the second part, but none of us got it the first time around. But it's not dropped as if it's a twist in the second one. It's dropped as if it is assumed knowledge from the previous one, which is where my confusion started with this story.
Gotcha. I get what you're going with. I don't hate it at all.
Okay, fair.
We're gonna have very different views on this because like I did not hate this at all. For that for that drop, because I saw it more as a twist than a just like dropped out of from nowhere. But I understand like why you might also like not like that, because it is kind of dropped just abruptly, and like you might not like that for that.
Yeah.
But that's why because
Well,
that yes, Mikey.
yeah, and the other thing is that it says, like, before it reveals the whole mystery meat, it didn't need Sherlock for the orphans to eventually put two and two together that night of the reunion. The night of the reunion was the first part,
Yeah,
and it took us more than putting two and two together because we
fair.
didn't get four in
Well,
the
I guess
first
we're
one.
dumber than the average orphan.
I guess so. Also, I do want to point out that this story does have at the very beginning. Please read part one. Because this
Yeah.
is sort of like this is sort of like a serialized thing. So like you are there in this is a case of like you should read like you've read part one, now go on and read part two, because that's where like the actual like revelation of the like the horribleness is happening. The first part was like kind of just more of a setup of like the characters and stuff like that, and then this one is actually like the dark reveal. But yeah, no, I could see like maybe like if part one and part two were combined together, rather than being a part one and part two, like having that separation, that would probably be better. But as it is, like I still really dug this story, and yeah, so I will not interfere when you guys start ripping it apart. So starting with Mikey, these stands for evil.
All right. Well, just continuing on the thought. Um, I feel like the whole "we had 8 orphans" uh, would have been a good zinger for the first part.
100%.
Um,
I'm with you. Preach. Preach,
Honestly,
but
sister.
honestly,
but
you know, like you point that out, yeah.
Okay, great. I thought you were going to counter us there.
No, like legit is like, no, that's it. That is a good point.
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, but the thing is, as I was reading this part, it's halfway through we get the zinger, and then there's still more to read. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we've dropped the zinger, the oh shit moment, but there's still more. And like, what else can top this zinger in this part of the story? Nothing.
I
Like,
mean, but don't why like what like some of the past behind that?
well, it's fine, but it should have been part of the first part. then the second part could focus on the why and such. I don't know. It just that's my thoughts on that part of it. Next. So the section where it's describing itches and talking about feeling itchy makes you feel it in real life. I sneezed.
Fair. I stood there staring into oblivion as the empty husk that I am.
I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I will not scratch. I will not scratch. I will not scratch.
Was it bugging you?
I had like there was like one part of my body that suddenly had an itch, but like that was it.
It worked. It worked on one of us.
Of course, it worked on one of. Of course, it would work on me.
All right. And then my next note here, I have a quote. She must sacrifice a child and feed its flesh to another, so that his essence can be passed on as it now does in her. To which my response is, well, but if all the orphans were fed other orphans, or this one orphan that they all ate, then doesn't that mean that if she dies, the demon will pass on to one of the others that's still alive?
Or the demon is already hassling all the other ones also simultaneously.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on with Shauna or any of the other guys.
Yeah, like, well, it feels like it's can only tackle one at a time, which is why the one orphan in the previous story killed himself because the demon was hassling him.
I don't think he killed himself because of that. I think he killed himself because he realized they'd been eating human flesh, and so he went nut, or he rolled a sand check and got down to 0 and decided the best way to cleanse his soul was to cleanse his body with bleach.
But the thing is, how did he realize this? It's 20 years after.
That's true. Maybe he finally realized what. Maybe there's something happened with Joachim where he realized, like, oh, that's the taste. Like, yeah, we don't know. There are some. Again, there's some things missing.
Some razor is what it is.
Joachim, God damn it, that's so good. Joachim. Yeah, like maybe like Joachim like found out what the taste of human flesh was, and then realized like that's what was like that's what the dish was, and so like so he came to the conclusion that like ahead of the others. I don't know. That's I
hate that I like this. It's over.
No, I still like the story, but like I'm agreeing. I am actually agreeing with like your guys' points, but like it's not ruining the story for me.
I was talking as if I was Joachim, saying I hate that I like human flesh.
Gotcha. It's like, oh shit, I like this. Well, time to kill myself.
Yep. Thanks. I hate it.
Yeah,
that kind of feeling.
Yeah. Like I think why she got targeted was because she like she says she invited it to her. She invited it not into her, but like into her like kind of like inner circle. Like she wanted to like be friends with it, so that was an invitation. And in a lot of paranormal supernatural stuff, demons and spirits like need an invitation to start haunting a person.
Yeah.
So
like
like
vampires, where they can't come in if you don't let them in, kind of deal.
Yeah, very similar to that. Yeah.
Okay. But in the first story, we have her leaving part of her meal under her bed for whatever it is.
Yeah.
That was part of his body that she left under his bed. So of course he's going to haunt her.
Well, yes and no. Yes, you're right, but also like that is also a sign of invitation, which again for spirits and stuff, that's all it needs. So and the fact that it was also a part of his bodily like vessel or like bodily like presence just helps familiarize him or like ground him to that person too, because it's like she's offering food that is also him. She was just doubly fucked by invitation. Yeah.
All right. And then my last note here is that we have a little hypnosisception. So her eyes are still closed because she's still in the dream.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, there's just a spinning top, just never ending.
Yep.
Still have not seen that movie.
It's okay.
Cool.
It is fun. It's just I do think it's a little overhyped. Like, but like it was cool. Like there's some cool scenes and stuff, like some cool like brain thinking scenes, and there's also like a lot of cool action sequences and visuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. I don't think it was as great as like people were like visual like overhyping it at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of my actual thoughts.
Okay. Gamer.
Let's see what I got left. So my first one is just on the intro, saying like there are very few things more amazing than the human mind, a particular grouping of atoms forged in starfire, arranged and connected in such a way that it yearns to comprehend the world around it. So I appreciate the like pro-human badassery of that line, but like you're really giving a lot of credit to humans. We're just smart monkeys, man. That's it.
I mean, it is pretty. I mean, I think like yes, but also like it's pretty crazy that like these smart monkeys on this dust ball floating in the void, like rose to like the heights we've rose to so far.
Oh, for sure. Like
In
it's
such a short time,
amazing.
like we went from we went from an agrarian like hunter gatherer culture to landing on the moon and sending robots to various planets beyond our own planet and moon in like under 10,000 or in just around 10,000 years.
Yeah, it's kind of
That's
nuts.
pretty like that's comparative to like deep time, which is like millions of years that this planet has been around. We are but a blip, and in that blip we have already like we've already like started like diving into space travel.
A lot in a little amount of time.
Yeah,
which is great.
But yeah, I also
people as a whole are idiots, so hence why. Yeah.
Also, actually, now that you brought it up, like, yeah, that whole thing of like our atoms created by like, or like, was it Starfire, like forged by Starfire?
Yeah, forged
like,
in Starfire.
Like, I mean, like, I guess because like we did need sunlight to like we did need like sunlight and heat to kind of like develop our single-celled organisms into complex organisms and what have you and some of that. The kind of start churning the primordial juices.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, it seemed like it's like forged by Starfire. It's like, I mean, that's a little like presumptuous. That's a little like self-presumptuous.
It's going a little far with it,
yeah.
But yeah. But I'll move on.
Okay.
Well, it's technically moving on. It's kind of talking about the same thing, so I'm not going to bother repeating it. So, it's kind of like just me thinking about that whole intro and like how humans have evolved so fast and gotten as smart as us smart people are. It's weird, like how we're so different to like all life on Earth. Like it does kind of lend credit to the argument that we aren't even from this world. Like, unless this is just how the universe works. Like, each planet evolves its creatures until one becomes self-aware, and that's it. Like, they're the dominant species on the planet, opposed to, like, multiple species all being self-aware on the planet, you know?
I mean, technically, at one point, there were, like, 2 or 3 sentient species on the planet that we wiped out.
Hell yeah.
Like
That's the human spirit.
like Homo, I think it was like Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were technically at one point like a divergent. Like we had there were two types of humans on the planet, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, and we just kind of we just sort of like outgrew and outsmarted the Neanderthals.
Nice. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's the going theory right now, though. Anyways, like kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like they had like a different type of adaptability that didn't work out versus our adaptability that worked out. Like our there's theory that like Neanderthals didn't have the same kind of like pattern recognition that we have in our brains, so like they weren't able to like do certain things that we are, kind of thing. And so our adaptability, our adaptable trait was better than their adaptable traits. So
yeah, it's basically like two different versions all like competing to it's like when the military like tries to get like a new rifle through, like they have a bunch of different versions that go through testing and only one makes it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the term work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
Like something like that.
For sure.
But yeah, like at one point, like we did kind of war with another species. It just was kind of similar to ours. But I digress.
Yeah, that's neat though. That being said, like when I got thinking about that, I tried to counter that I was having an argument with myself at the moment.
It sounds like it sounds like you were having an existential crisis.
I was just thinking because like it got me thinking. That's all.
Yeah.
So like I was thinking like I was trying to counter it with like compared to Mass Effect where there's a bunch of different alien races, but then I got thinking, no, they're all from different planets too.
Yeah. I mean, they're all biological life, but they all evolve differently based on the planet's environments and like situations and such.
Yes, my whole note on this is like one self-aware creature per planet seems to be the way it works, even in fantasy. I know that I'm sure there's some fantasy stuff that there's multiple on one, but that all like evolved on one. But yeah,
actually, connective tissues time. I've been playing game. I've been playing a game called, or I've been watching a show called Defiance, which is a sci-fi series where aliens like show up to Earth in like 2013 or 2014 on like arcs. Something goes wrong. There's a war. The arcs explode in orbit and start bringing down, and like so basically the survivors of both humans and the various alien races from this other far off star system now live on like a terraformed Earth because the terraformers on the arcs that came crashing down transformed the entire Earth, so it's like practically unrecognizable to what we have now. But there are some of those species, some of those aliens that did develop on the same planet, just in different regions in their home system. So I'm pretty sure that's like what happened. But yeah, there are also other series, like sci-fi series and stuff of that where there's a planet with multiple aliens, that or like multiple different species of aliens that developed on the same planet.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure like even in real life, it's a case by case basis. I'm sure if there is intelligent life out there in the universe that we're unaware of, there's probably planets that have multiple on. We just don't know. Either way, I'll move on from all this.
Okay.
So my next one is just about how like there's like left field cannibalism in this story. Cannibalism from Left Town, basically. Just because like in the first story we all missed it, and we kind of brushed on this, but like, so like is that technically a problem with the first story that all three of us missed it, or is it just a problem with us that it's not like we're not smart enough to catch it or something like that? Because it's not at all. It's not even subtle. Like we thought about like random different reasons why the father is a horrible person, and we were throwing a bunch of stuff out there, but none of that was said. It was all headcanon.
Here's why I like this story, and why I don't hate that we missed it. I think it's on us because when I went back to that story, it was so glaringly obvious. To me,
I said this before, but that's because you went back with the knowledge of this story.
Yeah,
and you were looking for things that could connect to it. You were Captain Hindsight.
Well, no,
Mhm.
I mean, again, maybe. But like to me, like this was a journey of like, so like you are supposed to go back and like recall things that you just read from from part one. Like I think this is one of those cases where the story, like part one and part two, are supposed to be read like in conjunction, maybe not a week apart, like we do. But it's just the way our show is. Because just like to me, the dish and also the appearance of the kid, like the stumps, suddenly made way more sense to me when I realized that they were being fed this child's flesh. I was like, that's why he doesn't have limbs.
Yes.
And yeah, so and also Jockum's suicide suddenly made a lot more sense why he used the bleach. It made like I think that's a good part of like for me that's why I liked the writing, was because like it was suddenly throwbacks to like things that you missed from the first one, but like now are coming back up and you're remembering things from part one that make more sense now. That's why but
again, like the way that I saw that when it first dropped, it just confused me. Where like let me find the actual line when it's talking about it, because it came across so matter-of-factly, not as a twist, even though it's meant to be a twist in the middle of the story, which is weird, like Mikey said. So 8, you to have the power of Sherlock Holmes, blah blah blah, you didn't need it for them to put together the night of their reunion. Missing orphan, ghostly apparition, missing limbs, and mysterious meat. They have been consuming human flesh. It's just kind of mentioned, and then it's like, what? When did that come from? And then it goes in saying, like the pun of 8 and 8 and stuff like that. But it's just kind of dropped, but so gently.
Yeah.
I wish it was a harder drop at the end of the first story.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that this is the first time we get a mention of mysterious meat.
Because it's just said she made that dish. Like, there's nothing weird about it.
Yeah. Like, if they had mentioned mysterious meat in the first one, like, somehow, then we might have come up with it's human flesh. But that's the key point, or the key part of that sentence, because we got a missing orphan, a ghostly apparition with missing limbs, but mysterious meat was not mentioned in the previous one.
For all we know on the first one, the reason he has no limbs is just because like that's the way that spirit is, not because he was being hacked up by the father. Like,
I mean,
in any story, you see a creature the way he is, and it's not necessarily a result of the story. It's just a result of that creature's past that isn't necessarily even mentioned in the story.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Yeah. I'll move on from there. And then, well, I'm kind of sort of moving on in regards to the ATE versus EIGHT of 8s. As I said, as a man who loves playing with my words, I had to resist facepalming when I read it, because all the way up until that point, there was no drop of cannibalism, and then it just dropped it hard, and then threw a pun in my face while I was trying to contemplate why this happened, and like, did I miss something? Am I confused? And then it's like, here's a pun. I'm like, you cultist. Every time I make a pun, that face you give me, that was me for a minute.
Gotcha.
Yes. But yeah, I just want to drive home a little harder that I feel the cannibalism angle should have been cut in a little sharper in the first story, just to make this make a little bit more sense and flow better in the second one. Also, looking back at the quote, it said we had 8 orphans. 8 orphans. So in the eating context, that would be him saying we had 8 orphans. Like, but wouldn't he say, like, in the moment of his dying breath, wouldn't he say we 8 orphans, not we had 8 orphans? Again, and like maybe blame the bleach, or maybe blame their Abernanese or whatever the fuck. But
yeah, I was about to.
Yeah, I know you were. That's why I was going to cut you off. So I was able to do it for once. Yeah, that's probably it. But still, Anyway, moving way on from all that shit. To ensure a supply of fresh meat for their quote-unquote feasts, it had become clear that Abraham had to have kept the missing orphan alive for at least several months. Yeah, because like there's no way an orphanage could ever get like donations of normal food or nothing, right? Like this is the only way that they could possibly get meat.
Yeah.
That's
Well, again, that's
weird.
in hindsight, like when you're reading that, yeah, that it's like you're wondering why they're resorting to cannibalism, but then there's this bargain thing that's brought up of this like supernatural element. That so like it wasn't just because they needed to eat the like they needed the meat, and so it was because there was something else more sinister going on in the background.
Yeah, it's just it was shown to the kids like, oh, here we finally got some meat.
Yeah,
to make it like seem special to them or whatever, but like it's not because they theoretically couldn't get meat otherwise. Fair enough. And then so we get to the ending where like the spirit the child is like a spirit that's like attached to Sachi now and is making her cook cannibalistic meals for her own children right now. So that this spirit can be passed on to her own children, I guess, is that how it basically is going. So does that mean that the child that Abraham was cutting up was not the same child as the spirit, or are they one and the same? Because like Abraham was brought forth a deal that he had to do this stuff and chop up a child, and then the kids were seeing the apparition of a child show up and disappear. So was that the demon that is possessing them? That is hassling, or that was hassling the father, but not actually the physical child that was being chopped up in the orphanage. Like, did he look completely different?
See, that's why I think like Vanna, like again, we suddenly get this like he died when he died. They the only thing of value that they found on him was this girl's locket, which said Vanna. So I think you're kind of on the right track here. Like the ghost of the boy wasn't the one that was being fed to the children in the orphanage. That was a little girl named Vanna.
Yeah.
And the boy is just the demon spirit or evil spirit, or maybe like the original spirit of the first victim of this cannibalistic rite or ritual. That like from further down the line, like maybe it did start when like again Father Abraham was a child and was fed flesh for some reason. Like again, there's a lot of questions. I'm not denying that. There's a lot of questions. Just for me, it didn't ruin the story as much, but yeah, there is definitely like a lot of out of context sort of like weirdness going on by the end of the story.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's about it for my notes until final.
All right. Well, on to final thoughts then. Yeah, I'm still going to recommend it. The story does leave me with a lot of questions, but I don't necessarily feel ripped off by the outcome of part 2. And the answers and revelations we do get, for me, were well worth the read. Like from part 1 to part 2. I do feel like you do need to read part 1 and part 2 in relatively in consecutive order and in the same day, basically. Like I think this is basically like this two-parter really should just be one story, because you need to read part 1 and 2. Like reading part 2 alone, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you need to read part 1 to get context for part 2. So yeah, but ultimately I still will recommend this one because I really enjoyed the read and the dark twist we got, because I knew Father Abraham was doing some dark shit. I just didn't expect. I was completely off of what kind of dark shit he was into or he was doing. But also he didn't have a redemption, but like it did show some complexity to his character in that, yes, he was doing these two horrible things, both hypnotizing the children to make them forget things and also making them eat flesh, but also you could tell that he was a tortured soul himself, because he did care for the children and he was a fatherly figure to them, and like he saw them as his children. and he seemed to by like halfway through the events and stuff like that, he did seem to sacrifice himself for the children. And then also
He's not
went
a
off.
monster. He didn't want to do it. He had to do it.
Yeah, exactly. He was a victim as much as the children were. It seems in the story.
But we also don't know why he had to do it. So for all we know, he had to do it because the freaking the crab people told him to. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not saying like he's completely redeemed by the end, but like he has some complexity to his character that isn't just like, oh, he was a psychopath and he was doing this because he liked it, and he was actually just like, yeah, he was good to the kids he spared, but like he was also a horrible monster. Like there's a little bit more complexity to his character that I enjoyed in the story.
Yeah,
and that I was from part one, I remember like it sounds like the father was doing some dark shit to these children. I really hope not, because he seemed like such a nice guy. And the second one is like, haha, I knew it. But then I get reading a little bit further. It's like, damn it, he's still complex. Still good. There's still some good in him. Damn it. But yeah, so
you wanted him to just be a full monster.
I mean, no, like yes and no. Like yes, simply yes, because like then I have a target to like oh my god, that guy's bad. He deserves all the shit he had, like that happened to him. But like this way, he's much more complex and cool, or much more complex and interesting from a narrative point of view.
As soon as you said cool, I just imagined him with sunglasses all of a sudden.
Just sunglasses like drift down from the sky.
Yeah.
But no, like I just like that's why I will recommend the story. Like for me, I enjoyed the journey and enjoyed the reading from both parts, and like the twists and turns we got. So yeah, that's why I'm going to recommend it. Mikey, these dens for evil.
Well, I think I might have come across a somewhat plot hole. So, how exactly does she know that she must sacrifice a child and feed its flesh to another? Because the creature or monster, no arms and legs, just laying there looking at her, hissing in agony. And then that's the thing, is that it's beside her, hissing all the time when she tries to sleep. How can it whisper evils into her ear and torment her thoughts if all he can do is hiss?
Okay, supernatural thing. It's probably hissing outwardly, but it's like sending her messages into her head.
I don't know.
I mean, that's the closest we got, unless, like, close to his death, Abraham actually told her what the hell's going on, and she, like, you have to carry the torch now. You got to do it. As he's laying there dying in his hospital bed with his cool sunglasses on.
Except that's not what happened to him at all.
I know.
She only learned about his death from Chana on a phone call.
I'm trying to find a way that she could have found out, because it is.
She found out supernaturally. It's a fucking ghost or demon or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever. We don't know.
Yeah, it could be some kind of weird, like, dimensional demon or alien.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably that fucking goat thing that lives in the corner.
Oh, you're back on that now.
Oh, I will always be on that. I love corner goats.
Sounds like an offshoot of Corner Gas or something like that.
Corner goat. It's just, or it's like a mix between like Corner Gas and Men Who Stare at Goats. The movie about like that psychic warfare training thing from the 70s or 60s, where like they were trying to like get people to psychically blow up goats.
What the fuck?
That's a real. By the way, yeah, or that was a real. I'm not sure. Well, not sure if it's a real, but it was a conspiracy thing about like kind of in the same vein as like MK Ultra. Where they were like they were trying to like the U.S. government was competing with the Russians because they heard the Russians were doing similar research of like psychic agents and psyops and stuff. So they were like there was this like one instance where they were running experiments to see if they could get somebody to psychically blow up people. And their subjects for explode their initial like fodder was goats. So they
Nice.
just sit in a room with a goat and try and just like blow it up with their mind.
I mean, one time I went camping, I started a fire with my mind, so I believe it.
Okay.
I actually did. This isn't even a bit. One time I went camping. I'm not even joking. I wish I was joking. Ask Joe the Theater Douche. That's his name.
That's his moniker on our show.
Yeah. Basically we went camping and we found the campsite. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll camp here. And
I
then
remember the story.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I'm like just setting up like a couple of camp chairs and just sat down for a minute because like it was a bit of a hike to get there or whatever. And then I'm just looking at the fire and then it just starts. I didn't
Clearly,
do
that was
anything.
That was your innate ninja ability.
Yeah.
Pyro no jutsu.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It was weird. It totally magical.
Wow.
And totally not just because
Wow.
whoever used that last did not like
Properly
extinguish the fire properly.
Yeah, there were still some coals at the bottom of the fire pit.
Yeah. No, it was because I know magic.
Yeah, clearly.
Or maybe you have laser eyes.
Yeah. But they're like actual laser eyes where like you wouldn't see the beams. So like
Yeah.
you don't know when I'm using my laser eyes.
Yeah, you're using psychic laser eyes.
Yeah. Wow. That's my connective tissues time. I
Wow,
guess.
yeah. We just went down a rabbit hole there.
A little bit.
But yeah, okay. So
Anyway, so the issue, or one of the big issues that we brought up, is the cannibal part of this coming out of Left Town, because none of us saw it in the first part, and it's a twist that's in the middle when, in hindsight, it would probably have been better at the end of part one. Just as a sort of revelation at the end, like, oh, that's why he said what he did with the "we had 8 orphans."
Yeah. Imagine if it ended with that line. That would have been so good.
I will give you that. Like, I like it the way it is, but I will concede that this story would also be really cool if it had just like had all part one, and then we had a little bit extra on part one where the revelation was it was like it wasn't 8 orphans, they 8 orphans, and like all that stuff at the end of part one. And then that we never got part two. We never got any of the context as to like what was going on at that orphanage. It would also work as that.
Yes.
I will concede to that.
Yeah. And then the whole added confusion about this monster demon, like, is it only haunting Satya, or is it haunting the other orphans? Like, it adds so many questions about this that weren't there previously. So I just can't recommend this.
All right, fair. Gamer?
I'm more or less going to be piling on to what Mikey said, because like it adds a lot, but like, is it really needed? Because like in hindsight, I liked how the previous story was left off. It told us a lot without telling us everything. So we had to fill in the gaps with our own ideas of what happened. This one like lays out what happened for sure without going into full backstory on the demon. But like it drops it in a matter that's like so matter-of-factly that it bothered me, as I said earlier. Like it dropped the cannibalism like it was already mentioned as a twist at the end of the previous story. Meanwhile, it wasn't. And if it was, I would have been okay with it. But like, yeah, I was basically confused with the whole cannibalism the whole time. It took me for a loop, and that's why I was struggling with this entry of the story. It kind of bugged me the whole way through the whole read. And like by the end is like, is the eighth orphan a real person? Is a spirit, or is the actual meat supplying eighth orphan someone that no one ever saw and the spirit is separate? Because it's kind of talked about like the one that was like stalking the children and stuff was the one that was being cut up, but like that doesn't make sense actually. Because like, I was joking about it in the first one where like the eighth orphan's like walking around on nubs basically, and he's like very quickly running away somehow without limbs and stuff like that. But so it does make more sense that he's a spirit, and I like that it's quote unquote explained that it is, even though it's kind of not. But all in all, I personally would out of this two-parter, I personally would recommend just reading the first one and not reading the second at all. Because the second just added a whole bunch of confusion on top of what was already a great story, and it ended great, and I liked it the way it was. If these were sort of combined, or at least if the ATE was dropped and the cannibalism was dropped at the end of the first story, I'd be fine with that. And then we continue on to this story, and then I would be fine with this. That's really the crux of my whole issue, is where the drop is dropped and how it's dropped. So if that was swapped around a little bit, I would fully recommend both. But as it stands, with the stories as is, I would recommend reading the first one and just leave it up to your imagination of what happened, because I enjoyed that better than this read of the second one, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, that will do it for this week's episode. So 1 recommendation and 2 non-recommendations. If you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. We're all on Twitter, kind of.
Not.
Mikey is at the East Ends Revel. The Gamer in Yellow has an account that is the Gamer in Yellow, but without the W, because his name is very long.
Yeah. X won't give it to me, man. They won't give it to me. X won't give it to me.
X don't give it to you.
Yeah.
And I'm at Review Cultist. I'm also on Blue Sky as Review Cultist, so you can send me messages there. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com, where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah! And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. Select the back of the sports hat. We have $2 and $5 tiers with special episodes, early access, and extra content. To all our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. And without your stories that you write and post online, we really wouldn't have much of a show, because we'd have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the East Ends Revel.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.